Once we know kind of what we want to be doing with our research based on maybe knowledge gaps or based on a critical assessment of assumptions, then we want to define our research questions, our actual line of inquiry. One thing to note here is that researchers, really like with anything that we're looking to be successful in life, it's not a good idea to try to solve everything at once. Yeah, so you might, for example, find a lot of issues with assumptions. You might find a lot of knowledge gaps. Probably not a good idea to try to tackle them all at once. Yeah. So researchers at this stage will look to identify which of those things might be most important to tackle right now. First gap we should look to fill. First assumption we should look to validate or invalidate. That's where we might want to focus our actual research on. Once we have our research questions, our line of inquiry, what knowledge we're actually looking to build, then we need to design a research project. So this is about understanding what kind of methods would be best, or overall overarching methodology would be best. This includes a very philosophical approach to our research line of inquiry in particular. What are the elements of our research line of inquiry, our research questions? What do we know about those elements in particular? What do we know about what knowledge looks like and reality looks like in regards to those elements? We also need to take a look at what types of theories we're going to utilize in our research, what kind of frameworks as well. How are we going to see the world as we look to dive into our research, look to dive into the phenomenon that we're trying to understand better, and then figuring out our overall research design. This is about how we're going to collect data and how we're going to analyze that data in order to get answers to our research questions, in order to build knowledge. At this stage, by the way, we often then will put together a research proposal, because most research needs to be sponsored in some way, maybe by government or by universities or by other research houses, industries or companies, for example, as well. Research, like I said at the start, is long and arduous and often needs support, financial backing in particular, to support researchers, but also there are going to be direct costs perhaps of doing research. Do you need laboratory facilities, for example, in order to justify that what we're looking to do is grounded in the existing scholarship and is likely to be able to add significant knowledge. In regards to significance, by the way, because we started at the start with that problem, right, with that issue, and because we've taken these steps, we can point all the way back to that issue and say, listen, if I can add additional knowledge here, one of the big values of the research is that perhaps it will help to solve this pressing issue. And whoever's affected by that issue might want to sponsor. Big research houses, universities in particular, want to fund research that is going to have an impact. Yeah. And so if we can follow this process, we can link our research all the way back to that initial process. Yeah. Once we have our research approved, then we can go and actually do the research. This is where most of the time is taken in research. This is the actual going out, collecting the data, whether it be a survey, whether it be experiments or interviews, whatever it might be, case studies, observational studies, whatever it might look like. This is where we go out and we collect our data, and then we come back and we look at the data and analyze the data. Try to find patterns, try to test hypotheses, try to interpret the world, try to build knowledge. The last step is then compiling those findings into a research report, into an article, for example, that can be peer-reviewed and put in a journal. Might be a master's or doctorate thesis. We need to put it all together in a report and communicate those findings. Because the last thing we want is to do all that work and then for those findings to just be left on someone's hard drive. Yeah, we want to ensure that new knowledge can get out there and get to the people that might be able to use that knowledge.
Now, if you're a bit of a finance nerd like me, why don't you check out my Substack? There's a link in the description, and here you'll find additional concept notes, unedited videos, community chats, and much more. See you next time.